Hey, on today's episode of Easy Opens, we're going to be taking a look at the McFarlane Batman 66 Lord Deathman figure. I don't know what face to make. I feel like I need to be making a death face, but I don't know what that is. Like I don't know, Lord Deathman. Lord Deathman first appeared in Batman number 180 from 1966. According to Batman.fandom.com, they're a Gotham City gangster skilled at yoga that can enter a death-like state and fake their own death, which is pretty cool. I didn't know yoga offered that. Like that, I don't know. I didn't see that on the local listings of like yoga teachings we got around here, but that's pretty cool. All right, so now let's get this figure free from its plastic prison and see what we think about Lord Deathman. No matter how many times I say it still cracks me up. Lord Deathman. It's so good. All right, so fresh out the box, Lord Deathman looks so campy and so, I don't want to say cheesy, but that's kind of what it is. Campy's probably the best word. Campy's probably the best word, and that's what makes it perfect for the 1966 Batman line of action figures. I don't know. Maybe it's the skeleton thing. I'm a huge fan of skeleton characters despite not having a lot of them. I don't know. I just feel like there's not a lot of meat on the bone usually with them. Maybe it's just the skeleton thing. I mean, I've got one too. I just wear it on the inside, but Lord Deathman decided to wear it on the outside, and he's living his truth, and that's, good for him. But my main reason for totally picking up this figure was that he reminds me of like an early Kamen Rider villain, like someone who would show up in the Showa era and just be like working for Shocker and things like that. And so I was like, all right, cool. I'm a big fan of skeleton figures, and I'm a big fan of just campy looking figures, and anything that looks like an old Kamen Rider villain I'm a huge fan of. So yeah, he checked a lot of boxes for me, and he looks great for what this is. It's very simple. It definitely does not look like your standard 6-inch adult collectible action figure that you'd get from like Hasbro, Mattel, any of the normal go-tos, but he's not too dissimilar from them either, because his costume is pretty simple. So having it be flat and not seeing a lot of musculature, I mean, also he's a skeleton, so I mean, what muscular are you gonna have there? But still, kind of like how the Power Rangers had their toys back in the 90s, where you could see all their abs and everything, and it was like, how tight are those suits? I feel like that would just look weird on a figure like this, and I kind of like how flat it actually is. And the sculpt is pretty good. It's pretty flat for the most part. However, my favorite part is the belt. Just how big it is, and how it looks to be like it's its own separate little piece that's on there that they got, I don't know, on there, or it's part of the T-crotch. I don't know, one of the two. But nevertheless, just a giant belt buckle. Something about that. I know Wolverine used to have that back in the day, and I don't know, there's something about that. I don't know. It's kind of weird to me, but I'm a fan. And then the blue and the blue on the belt and the gloves work really well with the black and the white of the costume. I don't know. It's just a neat little color scheme and just very simple, basic costume. And then the skull, it looks okay. It's not bad. I do like it, but it looks stylized or kind of cheap. But I think it's somewhere in between, considering that this is a figure that's not supposed to have too much detail, I guess, or at least that's my understanding. But also from some of the pictures I saw online, this does look like some of the depictions of the character. So, I mean, there's that. But it's definitely not bad. It's just not quite as detailed as what you might expect from some other figures you might see in the toy aisle. However, I do wish that there was more paint detail possibly on the skull, but it might just not work. It might have made it look a little bit more out of place. I don't know, but what we have here isn't bad really at all. Like it was enough for me to still purchase it. So I mean, take that for what you will. So Lord Deathman comes with one accessory, and that is a sword, and it's just kind of like a katana, I believe, because I think a katana is kind of curved a little bit. I think Leonardo's ninjatos are straight, so it's not quite that, even though they're drawn differently a lot of the time. But I think this is more of a katana. If you know, let me know in the comments. But yeah, just a little sword. And it's nice. It's got some detail on the hilt and on the handle and everything. So, nothing to write home about, but still Pretty cool. All right, now let's talk about the articulation you're going to get out of Lord Deathman. So starting at the head, you got 360 at the neck. You got a little bit of wiggle room side to side, but not really much up and down. It's kind of just, there's not much there. He can look up a little bit, look down a little bit, but nothing too much. At the shoulders, you got 360 at the shoulder, as well as some up and down movement. You have a swivel joint in the elbow, which allows for 360 at the elbow, as well as some back and forth action. And then at the wrist, you have 360 because there's no wrist action there, and there's no alternate hands. So that usually gives you a little bit more range of motion there, but nope, just these. So then at the chest, there's no articulation there. You only get waist articulation for the upper torso, and that's 360. The legs, they go out front and back, pretty good amount, but they do not go out side to side at all. And then you have a single jointed knee, and if I am not mistaken, that is all the articulation you're going to get out of Lord Deathman. All right, so this is another figure that I could not find any information about their height or weight anywhere on the internet. However, this figure itself stands at just over 6 inches tall and weighs around 3 ounces. So now let's see how he compares to some other figures you might have in your collection. All right, here he is with Marvel Legends Wolverine and SH Figuarts Kamen Rider Geats. Here he is with NECA's Mirage Comics Casey Jones Gray Shirt variant figure and Jax Pacific's Fortnite Beef Boss figure. Here he is with the NECA 1987 animated series Raphael and the NECA Return to New York 4-pack Raphael. Here he is with Figma's Pokemon Gloria and Hasbro's G.I. Joe Classified Range Viper. Here he is with Mattel's Masterverse Scareglow and Skeletor. So I had no idea about Lord Deathman at all until the solicits came out and McFarlane was like, check out this figure. And I was like, oh snap, that's cool. That looks like a figure I would want. And he also looks like a Showa Kamen Rider villain. So I'm definitely going to want to check that out. And then just so happened to be that my parents were asking me something they could get me like toy wise for Christmas. And I was like, oh sure, this popped up on Amazon. So yeah, and it made for a great Christmas present opening and being like, my mom and dad being like, who's this? And I'm like, it's Lord Deathman. And they're like, oh my goodness, that's amazing. You're the coolest son ever. And like, we're so proud of you and all the life choices you've made. And I was like, I know. And then roll credits. Now, I knew that this figure wouldn't be necessarily up to par with other adult collectible action figures with ungodly amounts of articulation. However, I just couldn't resist him. He just looked so cool and gaudy that I just had to have him. I'm a big fan of skeletons and apparently giant belt buckles, as I mentioned earlier, and then also cloth capes. They just had me there. Just take my money. And I was not going to collect anything from this line because it looked like the articulation was super limited, and I get that there's a fan base for that, but that just didn't meet my needs. However, I was very pleasantly surprised to learn that this figure has slightly more articulation than I had originally thought. And that's what made me pull the trigger on buying him, because I loved the look so much, but it wasn't, quite enough for me to purchase on that alone. I would need him to be posable. Otherwise, I had no real use for him. So thankfully, yeah, the articulation in the arms really did the trick for me, as well as the knee swivel, which is really neat. And yeah, just was not expecting that. However, all that being said, he is kind of difficult to pose considering he's not your standard Marvel Legends type of adult collectible action figure. Once you get used to it, it's okay for some basic shots and stuff, but the biggest problem that I found was the lack of ankle joint really kept it from being able to be balanced very well and posed certain ways. So it did add some difficulty, but still nothing that's, not overcomable, I guess. The sword accessory is cool. It's fine. It's a sword. It does its job, and it's nicely made. And oddly enough, it looks really well with him. And I think it's what further adds to the Showa Shocker kind of writer villain-ness to the character for me. Would have been nice if he would have come with another accessory of some sort, but you know, what can you do? That's not really a slight on the figure. It just would have been nice. And as I've mentioned, I'm sure ad nauseum by this point, the main reason for picking up this figure is so I could have someone looking obnoxious to fight my other obnoxious karate bugman. And he does the job well. I'm satisfied with his compatibility with my SH Figuarts rider figures. And I mean, it just makes me wish that the SH Figuarts would put out more rider villains. But, you know, this is a nice stand-in for that if you're looking for that. Overall, I really enjoy this figure. Lord Deathman is a funny-looking, obscure Batman villain who just screams tokusatsu villain as well, and I'm a big fan of both of those things. Might I double dip if McFarlane decides to give us a more articulated, paint-detailed version of this character? Probably, but I think those things would take that figure further away from what I found most charming about him in the first place, not to mention making the price go up. Now, there is, if I'm not mistaken, a glow-in-the-dark variant of this figure, and I don't know, I'm kind of tempted by that, but glow-in-the-dark always gets me 6 to midnight, so, you know, it's up there. But I think that if you go into this figure knowing that it's not your standard Marvel Legends Hasbro offering, and just slightly less, then you won't be disappointed because it's a fun character, and yeah, just, you know, meet your expectations, I guess. So if you're a fan of obscure Batman villain action figures, then this guy is great. If you're a fan of skeletons with capes and belt buckles, then you can't go wrong here. Or if you're like me and want an odd sort of generic goofy looking skeleton with a cape and a sword to fight your SH Figuarts Common Riders, then you might be able to get some mileage out of this Lord Deathman figure. Or if you just want to have a character on your shelf that when people ask what's his name and you get to say Lord Deathman, it's an oddly satisfying, fun name to say out loud. Almost worth picking up the figure just for that alone. All right, well, that's going to do it for me today. Thanks so much for watching. If you liked what you saw, hit the like button. If you want to see more from me, hit subscribe and let me know in the comments, do you love Lord Deathman? And yeah, that's all I really want to know. Do you love Lord Deathman? Do you believe in him and do you love him? That's the two things that I need to know in the comments. So do that, and until then, else time.